Desi, when he was on Broadway, this is in New York, he was an enthusiastic customer of Polly Adler, who was the queen of Manhattan's brothel underworld. Can you talk about his connection with Polly Adler and his relationship with her business?
Yeah, well, Polly Adler was a figure, sort of extraordinary figure that you wouldn't really have in today's world where all this, anything goes and all this kind of activity is more or less, sanctioned. But she ran an establishment that catered to the cream of high society, writers and directors, Robert Benchley, George S. Kaufman. They all had house accounts there. She had a library full of first editions by authors who were her customers, and it was a very elegant, apparently, establishment that she kept moving to avoid raids by the police. But this was more than a bordello; it was really a kind of a gathering spot for, the elite of show business and society in New York. And Desi met a lot of important people there, and then Polly Adler sent a lot of her customers to see his show. So it was a mutually reinforcing kind of relationship. But again, it cemented his fondness for having a kind of commitment-free, zipless encounter, that persisted really for the rest of his life.
Yeah, this was back in the day when you could actually enjoy the depraved underworld of being a celebrity without phones and social media, where if you walked out of your apartment, someone didn't just, stick a Snapchat in front of your face. Like this is uh long before those days for sure.
Yes, and I'm sure that, what happened at Polly Adler stayed at Polly Adler's, and there people were able to celebrities were, in those days, very much out and about in, public places in New York and Hollywood and, every place in between, and they, as you say, there were gossip columns, and there were, roving photographers and reporters, but it wasn't the same as like the cell phone TMZ,
Yeah.
culture. They went out in the world largely unmolested by, people would come up and ask for autographs just like they would today, but there weren't stalkers. It wasn't dangerous. They weren't people chasing them down highways and taking pictures of their kids in school and stuff like.
Yeah. I don't know exactly when that code broke, but it seems like there used to be a stronger code between non-celebrities and celebrities back in the day that if, you know, Frank Sinatra or Desi Arnaz went out to a dinner and they were sitting at a restaurant and maybe there were a bunch of girls around and, not behaving in the most sober fashion, it wouldn't be on TikTok discover page the next morning with 500,000 views. Like people were like, "Holy shit, this is incredible," but they weren't like uh, they weren't it didn't seem like people were trying to capitalize on celebrity interactions to build their own
Yeah.
celebrity. It was just and maybe that was a product of not having the technology, maybe it was just a different mentality back then, probably a combination of
Yeah, it was
both,
a
but
combination of both. They didn't have the digital
yeah.
technology to be their own, sources of information. But also the studios hired all kinds of armies of PR people, and they paid off the police to, keep these things out of the papers. And so, but there was a you could be sort of in private and public in a way that you can't today.
Yeah. It's a weird world we live in today where the major celebrities aura becomes cannibalized into these micro celebrities. So I feel like there's really no like true celebrities that are 30 years old and below like back in the day. Like every new celebrity is kind of like they're a face, but they don't have the star power like back in the day.
That's fair to say. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another excerpt that I think paints a perfect picture of the bordello underworld of Polly Adler back in the day. You write that Desi became a customer after he noticed a gorgeous redhead moving past Lakonga's bandstand one night. She was one of Polly's employees, and Adler invited him over for a breakfast of caviar, sturgeon, and scrambled eggs. That is an amazing breakfast. With the redhead as a complimentary dessert. A man's visit to Polly's meant more than just sleeping with a woman, Adler wrote. He expected to be amused and even informed. He knew he could count on conversation about the latest plays and newest books. He would hear fresh and funny stories, anecdotes about the town characters, good talk and good liquor, good looking girls, and good looking surroundings. These were the ingredients which went into the making of a good night. And when the men said good night, although it was usually 5 or 6 in the morning, they really meant it had been. Desi's summary of the experience was less elevated. I've had my share of delicious sex in my life, but that redhead was something else, he recalled. If there was anything I had not learned at Casa Marina, she taught it to me. She was insatiable. That is a hell of a sales pitch by Polly Adler, I must say.
Yeah, and when Desi published his memoir in 1976, it's interesting commentary on what the media environment was like 50 years ago. There was a certain amount of critical pushback that he'd overshared, and that was a little bit unusual for a celebrity to tell stories like this on himself and be so frank about something like his sex life. And now, of course, this seems like a lace Valentine. It seems very mild and really innocent, but at the time, even 50 years ago, when he published that story, there was some pushback that he was, oversharing.